Sound check, 1, 2, 3. Sound check, sound check. Sound check, 1, 2, 3. Good morning, everyone.
Someone has 7.
One has their WebEx on, perhaps? Okay, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Waste Management Subcommittee meeting of May 11th, 2023. I'd like to now call the meeting to order. A reminder that all electronic devices are to be switched to a non-audible function during committee meetings. I'd like to do a roll call just as the first meeting of the Waste Management Subcommittee, and I'd like to welcome the new and returning members on the committee today. We have Councillor Taddison, who's appearing virtually today with us. We have Councillor Alex Wilson as well appearing virtually. We have Councillor Francis with us here and present in the room, and our citizen member, Kevin Hunt, as well. Welcome. Moving on, we'll do the appointment of chair and vice chair. May I please have a nomination for the position of chair for the Waste Management Subcommittee for the balance of the term being 2023 to 2026?
I'd like to nominate Matt Francis for chair.
Okay, and can I get a seconder, please? Or, sorry, Councillor Francis, do you accept the nomination as chair? I do. Great. And
I'll second that.
Thank you, Kevin. All right, so that was moved and seconded. So Councillor Francis, you can take over as chair now.
Are there any other
Oh,
nominations?
I'm sorry. Is there any other nominations for appointment of chair for this subcommittee? Seeing none, we'll have a vote. Show of hands, please, today. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, that carries. All right, Councillor Francis, you can take over as chair.
All right, moving on to appointment of vice chair. May I please have nominations for the position of vice chair of the Waste Management Subcommittee for the balance of the term?
I'd like to nominate Alex Wilson.
All right, Alex Wilson, do you accept the nomination of vice chair?
I do.
All right, is there a seconder of this motion?
I'll second that.
Very good.
Any others?
Any other nominations? Nope. Can I have a vote, please? Show of hands. All in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Congratulations, Alex Wilson, Councillor Alex Wilson, on becoming the vice chair. Moving on to the approval of the agenda. Legislative Assistant Whalen, are there any changes to the agenda?
Yes, Mr. Chair, there are changes to the agenda today. So under 9.1 consent items, this was added in error and is being withdrawn as consideration of this report will be addressed under item 8.2 under presentations, and the report will be considered after the presentation. There's also, although not a change, but the presentations 8.1 through 8.5 were added to the agenda today as well.
All right, may I please have a mover and seconder to approve the agenda as amended?
I'll move the agenda.
All right, hold on a second here. Moved by Kevin Hunt, seconded by Mark Taddison, Councillor Mark Taddison. We'll have a show of hands. All in favor? Any opposed? All right, that carries. All right. Are there any declarations of interest? Seeing none, I'll move on to the approval of the minutes of the previous meeting, June 27, 2022. May I please have a mover and seconder to approve the minutes of the June 27, 2022 as presented?
I'll do that.
Moved by Kevin, seconded by Councillor Taddison. All in favor or opposed? All in favor? Any opposed? That carries. All right. Moving on to staff presentations. I'd like to call upon Angela Story, Director of Waste Management, to begin the presentation. Is there any discussion?
Thank you, Chair, and welcome to our members of Waste Management Subcommittee, and congratulations to Councillor Francis as being nominated the Chair and Councillor Alex Wilson as being nominated the Vice Chair. So what we wanted to do today, you can go over one, Ryan. Oh, it's just waiting. What we wanted to do today was begin with an overview of our division, since it is a new committee for many of our members today. So for this morning, we'd like to provide a few presentations to update the committee on the divisional responsibilities and highlight a few of our higher level projects that we are working on. In future meetings, the next one is currently scheduled for June, we will be providing more detailed program and service updates because we want to engage you in discussions to help us to make some program decisions. So first up, I'd like to overview our division and its services. And that's the slide there is fine. Nope, stay back. So first, the team. I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce you to our management team. So I have with me today myself, Angela Story, the Director of Waste Management. I have an administrative assistant. Her name is Summer Belkazar. She's back in the office. In our waste collection section, we have the manager, Joel McCormick. And I've just highlighted for ease on this slide the best way to report any customer service inquiries or to report any issues in waste management is to email our waste customer service staff at wastemanagement@hamilton.ca. I also have with me today the manager of recycling and waste disposal, and that's Rob Connolly. Hi. Thank you. And our manager of waste policy and planning, Ryan Kent. The committee falls under Ryan's purview in his section, so he would be the one putting together the agenda, communicating with clerks. He is the staff liaison for the committee, so if you need anything regarding the committee, you can certainly go through Ryan. From an overview perspective, I think it's probably just a bit delayed. Maybe click on the screen first. And then go over, maybe it just moved, yeah. There we go. Okay, so I mentioned the three managers, and now we'll talk a little bit about the sections themselves. So under waste collections, they're responsible for the weekly curbside collection of our blue box, green bin, yard waste, and garbage programs. They also have the waste bylaw enforcement team, and they look after our downtown cleanliness services. In recycling and waste disposal, we've got the facility operation of the materials recycling facility. We call it the MRF, the central composting facility, which is the CCF. And we have 3 transfer stations and community recycling centers located around the city, and we have 1 reuse center. They also look after the municipal hazardous and special waste depots, and they operate and monitor the Glanbrook landfill and 13 closed landfills. Under waste policy and planning, Ryan's team looks after community outreach and events, program development, quality management, and they do the review and commenting on development applications. This is just a map. You're not expected to be able to read it, but what it shows here is the city of Hamilton with its boundaries, and you'll see some labels there, A1, B1, A2, B2, A3, and B3. The City of Hamilton's waste collection program is divided up into service areas, which are these categories that you see there. For our councillor members here today, you'll recognize your wards. So this map shows where you see the letter A. That means that the garbage, green bin, and yard waste program is collected by city forces. And if your ward starts with a B, then your garbage, green bin, and yard waste are collected by our contracted force through GFL. GFL is also contracted to us to pick up all of the recycling. So all of the recycling in the city is contracted out to GFL. On this map, if we were to zoom in, which we won't, there are some other symbols. It does show our landfill sites, our transfer stations, our reuse center, etc. So that is found on the city website. Happy to share it if anybody needs it. If you're wondering what the colors are on the map, that's actually the garbage collection days. So where you see, say, purple, for example, that would be Monday collection. Where you see blue, that would be Tuesday, et cetera. So if you're looking at your own ward or your own zone, you might be able to see the borders of where your collection days might change. I wanted to also ensure that you will know about our facilities, and so we will be working with yourselves as well as offering it out to any of the other councillors who might be interested, but we would welcome you down to our MRF or our CCF, up to the landfill, tour a transfer station, so that you can actually see kind of what happens on a day-to-day basis, and you'll be able to help tell your residents what happens when their waste leaves the curb. So we will coordinate those tours on dates. Hopefully that will work for you. This is really just a summary of the next presentations that we're going to cover. So we're going to be looking at, I mentioned in my opening, that we'll be looking at some higher level projects that we're working on, as opposed to getting down to the finite details of the program today. We're going to be talking about our solid waste management master plan, talk about Blue Box transition, our organic strategy, and provide an update on single-use plastics. It's up to, I'll ask the clerk, Aaliyah, if we want to have questions during each of those presentations, if that works for everyone, or if you want to hold questions to the end.
I would suggest after each presentation, just as it deals with the items, and that way it's more specific.
Thank you. So we'll do that, and then the clerk also included on the agenda a new business item at the end. So if there were any things that you maybe came today hoping to ask questions on, wanted staff to follow up on, or perhaps bring an agenda item to a future meeting, we can handle those new items out of new business. I have noted here that the next meeting is scheduled for June 23rd, and I mentioned earlier we want to provide some operational updates and discuss items that might need a new path forward. So I would like to pass the microphone over to Ryan Kent to start taking you through those presentations.
Might I just interject one moment and we can receive your first presentation momentarily? Chair?
Thank you for the presentation. Is there any, I can say this now, I said it earlier. Is there any discussion on the presentation? Seeing none, may I please have a mover and seconder to receive the staff presentation? Moved by Councillor Taddison, second by Councillor Alex Wilson. Show of hands, all in favor? Any opposed? That carries. All right, moving on to, I'd like to call upon Ryan Kent, Manager of Waste Policy and Planning, to begin the presentation on 8.2, please.
Good morning. So item 8.2 is the Hamilton Solid Waste Management Master Plan. So a little background. Hamilton Solid Waste Management Master Plan guides the future of the city's waste management system, including waste collection, processing, and disposal infrastructure. So the current version of the Solid Waste Management Master Plan was approved in 2012 and goes to 2025 and includes 3 guiding principles. The first is the City of Hamilton must lead and encourage the changes necessary to adopt the principle of waste reduction. The second is the Glanbrook landfill is a valuable resource. The City of Hamilton must minimize residual waste and optimize the use of the city's diversion and disposal facilities. And the third guiding principle is the City of Hamilton must maintain responsibility for the residual waste generated within its boundaries. Municipal partnerships will be considered. So the master plan operational update was approved in November 2020, provided a 5-year action plan from 2020 to 2025. So as I mentioned in the previous slide, the current master plan goes to 2025. We did an operational update in 2020 to give us action items up to the end of that time of the master plan. So this update is designed to complete the action items included in the current master plan and ensure Hamilton is prepared for the transition of the Blue Box program. Within this operational update, there were 11 new action items that were defined, in addition to 8 projects that were in progress prior to the 5-year operational update. And these projects are noted on the following slides. So this table here, I will go through, it talks about each one of these action items. I will also talk about the status of each one of the action items, whether or not they're completed, in progress, or if the work has not started. And I'll begin with the first 11 new action items identified in the master plan. So number 1 is the policy on intermunicipal partnerships, which basically defines how City of Hamilton waste staff will deal with other municipalities with any potential partnerships. And that item has been completed. Item number 2, support community reduce and reuse programs. This action item has also been completed when we created a policy to guide staff on how to provide better resources and support to these programs. Action item number 3, increase curbside enforcement. This has been completed as well, and this basically helped with waste collection staff at the curb and making sure that residents are better informed of what to do at the curb. Number 4, update single-family waste audit methodology. So waste audits are waste composition studies that staff lead to get a better understanding of behaviors of residents. That methodology was updated to provide more accurate and usable data, and we've already completed 1 audit under that new methodology. Just moving along to items that are now in progress. The first of which, number 5, is development options for the material recycling facility, or the MRF. This is looking at the most effective use of the property after the Blue Box program is transitioned. Number 6 is waste performance metrics and related policies. Traditionally, waste management has used waste diversion as the main metric. However, this action item is looking at other metrics with other targets to better define success with the waste management program. Number 7 is construction and demolition, or C&D waste program. So this would be looking at feasibility study or pilot to look at C&D waste managed by the city. Number 8 is existing program improvements. This one looks at 3 of our current programs in business diversion recognition, waste diversion at special events, and school education. And number 9 is trash tag program. So we're reviewing the current trash tag program to look at how we can identify efficiencies and opportunities for improvement. The last item that is in progress is preparation for the next waste collection contract, which you can see there is will be 2028 when we require a new waste collection contract. So it seems like there's quite a bit of time up until that, but there's a lot of lead time and it's a pretty involved process. So we've already started working on that. The one item that was identified that we haven't started work on is green procurement. So that's basically we're waiting for some federal regulation to act as a guide, and I'll be talking about that a little bit further in the presentation. This next table talks about items that weren't new items in the master plan update, but they were things that staff were working on prior to. And so I'll go through these now. There's 8. The first 2 that were completed, multi-residential data gathering, which is waste composition studies to get a better understanding of what residents in multi-residential buildings are, how they are participating in our programs. We've completed that program. The second is waste design requirements. The waste design requirements is a policy that guides how developments are going to be constructed so that they support waste diversion. Number 3 was a single-use plastic strategy. I will be speaking about this item a little bit more, but this strategy was approved, and basically what we're doing now is implementing the action items underneath that single-use plastic strategy. And again, I'll speak to that a little bit more later. Number 4 is route optimization software. So this is for our waste collection staff. So this is looking at updating how we actually generate our routes and manage the waste collections in these different areas. Number 5, Blue Box transition. This transition is scheduled for April 1st, 2025. So obviously that's going to be ongoing for a while. And I will be speaking a little bit more about that as well. Central composting facility, staff exploring options for the future of the organics management with the CCF. Again, another item I'll be speaking to in more detail later. Number 7 is transfer station community recycling center capacity. So there is an issue with the capacity at the 3 facilities that we currently have. So this is looking at how we can deal with that challenge. And the last item is the Glanbrook landfill development. So expansion into stage 4 of the landfill. That is what we've been dealing with in the recent past and what we're continuing to do right now. However, moving forward, staff have already commenced work on the next master plan update. So the update will be a long-term strategy to guide waste management in Hamilton for the next 25 to 30 years. So if you remember, I said that the current master plan is supposed to expire at the end of 2025, and so we're preparing to move forward after that point. So the timeline here on the slide, now to approximately the fall of this year, we'll be creating a scope. Then the following year after that, we'll actually be developing the next master plan. Hopefully by the end of Q4 2024, we'll have council approval on the master plan. And then onwards after 2025, we'll actually be implementing the action items underneath the master plan. I will stop sharing as that is the end of item 8.2.
Perfect, and thank you, Manager Ryan, for that great presentation. Are there any discussions on the presentation? Councillor Wilson?
Yeah, thank you. And through you, Chair, really excited about this. The solid waste management master plan is something I think a lot of residents in Ward 13 are talking about, people who are interested in diversion and have been trying to do it through church groups or things like that, and really interested in those community partnerships. And I saw there's been a lot of work there as well. I guess in defining that scope, are you just able, and maybe we're getting into this a little bit later today, so apologies if I'm doing that, but just kind of in the next 6 months or so, are those kind of first 2 steps of creating the scope and developing the solid waste management master plan? Are you able to talk a little bit about what goes into that?
Manager Kent?
Sure, through the chair. So specifically about the scope. So the scope will be, we'll be using a consultant, working with them, staff with the consultant to try and figure out what exactly we want to focus on within the master plan. So obviously that's going to impact whatever the scope is going to impact the work that's going to be done over that year to develop the master plan. That work hasn't started quite yet. We're basically in the stage right now of finding a consultant and completing what the work is that they're going to be doing. So the scope of work for that work. So right now we don't have a defined scope of work. We'll be working on that over the next 6 months. However, I'm sure that we'll be bringing that back to the subcommittee for consultation, especially in June. And then I'm guessing our next meeting will be in September after that. So I don't have any specifics for you on what the scope is as of this moment.
Councillor?
Yeah, thank you. And so I think at June, I heard will the kind of scope of going to the a lot of scopes, so I'm going to use different language. Will the request for proposals, or basically the thing that we're approaching potential contractors with, saying this is the project we'd like you to undertake, is that going to be, or some ideas of that coming forward in June? Or will it be, here's the contractor, we've already sent out that piece of paper, here are the people we think are viable options?
Manager Kent?
All right. So what we would be doing is we'll probably at that point have a consultant already who's going to be dealing with that. We would be, basically the work that we would be dealing with this committee would be more when we're trying to define what that scope is going to be. So the work after the consultant has already been hired and we've already figured out the recruitment of them and the procurement of them. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Councillor?
No, I think that's it for right now. Really excited for the rest of today. Thank you.
Very good. I see we have Councillor Taddison, you're up. Councillor Taddison, are you on you're on the speakers list? We can't hear you.
Well, that's strange. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you, we can't see you, but we can hear you. Go ahead.
Oh my gosh, sorry. Here we are.
Yeah, there we go. It's the Glanbrook thing.
We've got some cable issues out here. just in regards to the single-use plastic strategy, will we be hearing about that later today or next month?
Manager Carey, go ahead.
Yeah, through the chair, that is item 8.5. I believe we will be discussing in a little bit more detail in this presentation today.
I'll hold questions till then. Thank you.
Very good. Are there any other speakers?
Yeah, one other question through the chair. Sure. You mentioned that the landfill is moving on to the other cells. Just to give everyone some information on the landfill, what's its expected life? Because we haven't heard an update for a while.
Staff, go ahead.
Rob Conley, manager of recycling waste disposal. So through the chair, we just had a capacity study completed by a consultant, which we do every 3 years according to our procedure. And right now the forecast is 2059 for final completion of the site is what is anticipated at this time.
Does that help answer your question? Okay, you're satisfied? All right. Any other speakers here? Oh, I see Councillor Wilson. You're on for a second time. Go ahead.
Thank you. Just on construction and demolition waste, is it possible to get a bit of an update where that's at? I know, for example, if we're looking at partnerships or things like that, again, we've had local residents who work in sustainable construction reaching out to our office about how to partner with the city on these types of things. So are we able to get an update on where the program development is at there?
Through the chair, yes, we did a bit of a study on that going forward, a few years ago. Just availability of space was an issue. However, we are re-looking at that now with the new management of this area and seeing how we can run a pilot in one of our transfer stations. So I'll have more of an answer at the June meeting on how we're going to go forward with that.
Councillor?
Thank you. And then just again, if we have folks who are in the industry already who are trying to model best practices, looking to partner with the city and find ways to move this forward, is that come with some questions in June, or what's the best way to move that forward? If we have folks in community who are interested.
Yeah, through the chair, they can reach out to me personally and we can put them on a list and reach back out to them and we'll have some conversations. So yes, they can reach through to me and we'll have some chats with them.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much.
Great. All right. I don't see any further speakers here. May I please have a mover and seconder to receive the staff presentation? You do have another question?
No, I'll move.
You're going to move that?
Yes.
All right. Moved by Kevin Hunt, second by Councillor Mark Tattison. Show of hands. All in favor? Any opposed? That carries. So we need another motion here on the update. So may I please have a mover and seconder to receive item 9.1? Again, moved by Councillor Tattison, seconded by Councillor Alex Wilson. All in favor? Any opposed? All right, that carries. Right. Item 8.3, I'd like to call upon Ryan Kent, Manager of Waste Policy and Planning, to begin the presentation.
Thank you. All right, moving along, item 8.3 is on the blue box transition. So to provide a background on this item, on June 3rd, 2021, provincial regulations were enacted to make producers of packaging fully responsible for the operation and financial management of the provincial Blue Box program in all municipalities and First Nation communities. So a few highlights of the regulations. The first is to create a common collection system across the province. So in plain English, that basically means that all the residential programs will be the exact same throughout the entire province. So same materials that would be collected in the Blue Box programs as well as how they would be collected. An expanded list of acceptable Blue Box materials. So once the program becomes common across the province would look to expanding the list of acceptable Blue Box materials. And that the third item would be service would be provided to all eligible sources. So The regulations define eligible sources of where blue box material can come from and be included, and then this regulation basically extends that the blue box collection would happen for all those eligible sources. The current timelines are all municipalities will transition between July 1st, 2023 and December 31st, 2025. So in a couple of months, the first municipalities will start to transition their blue box programs to being producer responsibility models. Hamilton is scheduled to have their blue box program transition on April 1st, 2025. So just a little under 2 years from now. So on this slide, you'll see at the bottom there is a timeline which speaks to a couple of the items on the previous slide, as well as some that I'm going to speak to on this one. So a couple of some items that staff have been preparing to make the transition and some decisions that have been made already to date. So staff have created a roadmap for actions to be completed prior to transition in consultation with industry associations and municipal peers. So this is basically making sure that we check off all the boxes that we need to check before we transition. In Q3 of last year, council approved a staff recommendation for Hamilton to not act as a service provider to producers during the transition period. So again, the transition period is between July 1st of this year and December 31st of 2025. Hamilton, as you can see on this timeline at the bottom, transitions April 1st, 2025. The opportunity was extended by producers for municipalities to continue to provide blue box collection on their behalf during the transition period. The staff report, the recommendation from staff to council was to not provide that service, basically because the compensation that was being provided did not cover our costs. Over the next couple of weeks, a communication update will be sent out to provide an overview of the transition and next steps in the blue box transition for Hamilton and for the province. And then the last point here is a recommendation report will be presented to Public Works Committee later this year related to non-eligible sources that are currently not eligible for blue box collection under the regulations. And that is the end of item 8.2, so I will stop sharing to see if there are any questions.
All right, I think that's 8.3, but.
Oh, sorry,
No,
8.3.
Is there any discussion on the presentation? All right, if there's no discussion, I'll get Councillor Wilson to take the chair, or Vice Chair Wilson, if you could just take the chair for a moment, please. Just have a quick question. Through the chair, I just want to know, I see the January 1st, 2026 transition date that the province will be taking over blue collection. Has this been messaged out to the public, and is there a plan for this? How we intend on messaging that out to folks in the community?
Sure. Through the chair, we have started a little bit in our calendar. We fully expect that closer to the transition, we will absolutely be having a communication plan. When I mentioned the roadmap that we've generated, on there is to have a communication plan out to the residents, make sure that we get it out to residents ahead of time. So we'll be very focused on that in 2024 on the outreach team and getting that message out. But we have mentioned it in the last 2 calendars, I believe, waste collection calendars, but definitely there will be an uptick in that and be a little bit more aggressive in 2024, making sure that everyone is well aware that when transition happens, they won't be calling the city for blue box if it gets missed.
Oh, very good. I appreciate that, and I'm sure the residents will appreciate that as well. I know that getting the messaging right on this is important. I'm sure there'll be a lot of confusion as to why the province is doing this, so I want to make sure that people know, what the plan is here and that the province is taking this over January 1st, 2026. So thanks for that clear answer, and I will take the chair back. If there's no, I see that we have a speakers left. Councillor Taddison, go ahead, please.
Just curious as to, you said service is not going to be provided because it was going to be you weren't going to be able to recover costs. What do you mean, what service not going to be provided?
Sure, through the chair. So the Blue Box collection on April 1st, 2025, the city of Hamilton will no longer at that time be providing that collection. So as Director Story mentioned earlier about how we have GFL, a contractor that collects that on behalf of the city, it would now be a contractor who is doing this on behalf of producers. So we had the opportunity to continue to provide that service from April 1st, 2025 to December 31st, 2025, and be compensated by producers to provide that service. However, the compensation that was being offered did not cover the full costs of what it would take for us to have our contractor continue that service.
Okay, so at no point there will be Blue Box collection stopping.
No, so, sorry.
Okay, that's my question. That's all.
Through the chair, the regulation does say that during the transition period, there would be no change in service to residents.
Good, Counselor. All right, any other speakers? Not seeing none. So if I could please get a mover and seconder to receive the staff presentation. Moved by Counselor Tadison, seconded by Kevin Hunt. All in favor, show of hands. Any opposed? That carries. All right, moving on to item 8.4, Organics Management Strategy. I'd like to call upon the busy man of the day, Ryan Kent, Manager of Waste Policy and Planning, to begin the presentation. Go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, again, 8.4 Organics Management Strategy. So just giving everyone a little bit of background on this. So our green bin program here in Hamilton started in 2006. And the Central Composting Facility, or our CCF, has a current processing limit of 20,000 tons per year. So you can see the top picture over there. That is the tipping floor at the CCF where all of the green bin material from our residents goes. The current CCF processing technology is aerated tunnels. So that material moves in. You can see the bottom photo there, where all the material goes into, and that is where the material breaks down. So currently, staff have just started developing a new strategy to determine the preferred processing option of green bin material to include a focus on renewable energy. So many municipalities harness the gas that comes from the breakdown of material during the processing of organics from green bin material and use it for other uses. Currently that isn't done in Hamilton, but staff is looking into that technology currently and seeing what options are available. So this technology assessment is scheduled to be completed by the fall of 2024. So that was a very brief presentation, number 8.4, but I will again stop sharing to see if there are any questions.
Great, thank you for that. Are there any discussion? Is there any discussion here? Councillor Wilson, go ahead.
Just a quick one through you, Chair. How close do we get to that 20,000 tons capacity of the compost facility?
Who can answer that?
Through the chair, we actually have exceeded that a couple of years ago by just slightly over 20,000 tons. Last year, we were just underneath the 20,000 tons, and this year we're trending to be under the 20,000 tons again. So we work with the ministry closely. We report the tonnage so they're aware, and if in the event that we go over, we have to go to a contingency plan of finding another facility in order to take that extra tonnage currently.
Councillor?
Thank you. I really appreciate that, and makes sense that we use neighboring municipalities. I know back to the kind of the solid waste management plan presentation, one of the 8 kind of ongoing projects was to focus on the capacity of the central compost facility. Are we at a decision point, or are we nearing a decision point on expanding capacity if we're kind of reaching capacity each year and we know growth is predicted for the region, or do we think we're going to become more efficient or use diversion or other things to kind of extend existing capacity?
Through the chair, so currently we're pretty early stages of that technology assessment. So we are working with a consultant right now to identify all the available technologies. So we hope to have that completed over the next, I believe, month or two. And then what we would do is looking at assessing all of the potential technologies that we could use and what works best for us. So the first stage is identifying what's available. Second stage is going to be assessing the technologies that are available. So that stage is going to take a little bit longer. As I identified in the timeline, that would more likely be 2024 towards the fall, when we would be looking at actually coming to council with a recommendation as to how to move forward.
Thank you so much.
Oh, sorry, Director Story, go ahead.
Through the chair, and thanks, Councillor Wilson. Just to add to that, our goal is to absolutely exceed the 20,000 tons at our CCF and bringing in the curbside organics. So, you know, one of the things that we talk about when we talk about diversion is getting more participation in the green bin, getting less organics out of the garbage bags. Right now, with our 20,000 ton capacity, we need to be careful because we do skate that line a little bit. So our goal is to ensure that our new technology will accept up to at least 40,000 tons. And if we need to look for some merchant capacity to help us, you know, fully utilize whatever the new system is that we go with, we will do that. But there are some organics regulations that have come out and will come out to be a little bit stronger from the province in the next little bit. And so we will be having, you know, full-on outreach and potentially enforcement programs related to organics. But right now, we just have to be a little bit careful just because of that tonnage capacity. The last thing we want to do when when Manager Conley talks about the contingency plans, if we go over 20,000, is to send that material to the landfill.
Councillor?
Thank you so much. I was done, but that actually prompted something from you, which is just on the note of community composting facilities. Just wondering if we've thought about that, if that makes a dent, or if the scale we're talking about thousands of tons, there's no ability to make a dent.
I didn't catch the beginning of that.
Through the chair.
Sorry, through community
just clarify
compost.
a little bit.
So I know Austin, Texas, other cities have programs where they encourage backyard compost and other types of things at the community scale. Sometimes networks don't just have it at the household scale, they connect neighbors together. So different scalings of that, but essentially not a central, a diversified or a dispersed composting facilities. Any notes on that as a transition?
Yeah, through the chair.
Or have we considered that before? Thank you.
That's okay, thank you, through the chair. So we do promote the sale of composters. You may have heard back in 2018, we had a small odor issue at the composting facility, and we actually had some ward-sponsored funding to provide free of charge backyard composters to residents so that they could compost in the interim. The thing with backyard composting is not quite all of the products accepted in our curbside program can go in a backyard composter. So we would still need something for that overage, but we report on it when we send our data to the province every year on our waste management plan. We include number of composters sold, et cetera, so that we can track some data of what we think is, you know, being composted at places other than ours.
Councillor?
That's all for me. Thank you so much.
All right, very good. See next speaker, Kevin, go ahead, please.
That's okay. Mark had this question.
Oh, you were on next, so that's why I.
Oh, okay. My question was new technologies. Is the CCF going to remain in the same location, or are we thinking a different facility site?
I think that through the chair, it's pretty early stage for me to make a comment on where we think that they would be going. Obviously, there's a lot of factors that we have to take into account, considering the different technologies, what the footprint of them might be, and infrastructure and all those other aspects. So I think we're pretty early on in the stage for me to say whether it's going to remain in the same location or be moved somewhere else.
Does that satisfy? Yeah? Very good. All right. Councillor Taddison, go ahead, please.
Oh, I better get off the couch here. I thought I heard that the next focus for the organic management strategy was going to include a focus on renewable energy. And when we're, and I guess that's what we're talking about with all this new technology and that. Is that correct?
Through the chair, that's correct. Yeah, looking at how we can harness the energy from the breakdown of the organic material and use that energy, correct.
So would that involve any type of incineration or burning?
Through the chair, no. Typically with green bin material, you wouldn't be burning it. So a very common example of what this would look like would be an anaerobic digestion system. For example, what Toronto uses, they've got a couple of them, where you use a system which is pretty, I should say, everything is, I forgot the word, but it's much easier for you to capture all that energy and capture that gas because it's an enclosed system. That's the word I was looking for. It's enclosed.
Okay,
and then
there
you
we
can
go.
use
So it's
that.
enclosed.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay,
That's
fair enough.
one
I was just,
example.
I was just
One example of what we might be looking at. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Thanks. I'm aware of some areas that actually burn their waste and use it to create it, and I want to make sure that we weren't, that we were considering the potential for greenhouse gases if we were going to go with that process. So thanks for clarifying that.
All right. I see no further speakers, so may I have a mover and seconder to receive the staff presentation? Councillor Taddison,
I'll second it.
seconded by Kevin. Show of hands, all in favor? Any opposed? That carries. All right, moving on to item 8.5, Hamilton's strategy to reduce single-use plastics and federal ban on single-use plastics. I'd like to once again call upon Ryan Kent, Manager of Waste Policy and Planning, to begin the presentation.
Thank you. So moving along to number 8.5. So a little bit of background on single-use plastics here in Hamilton. So on May 22nd, 2019, staff were directed to report on the feasibility of creating a zero plastic waste plan. In response to this, staff on February 24th, 2021, presented a Hamilton strategy to reduce single-use plastics, and that was approved by council at that time. So currently, staff are implementing, as I mentioned in the master plan items earlier on in the presentation, so staff are currently implementing the action items under that strategy. One of those action items you can see is the picture on the slide. That is a bottle fill station which was installed at Kings Forest Golf Club to reduce the sale of single-use water bottles. And we've also installed one at Shadok as well. So the city-owned golf courses to reduce the amount of single-use plastics that are actually generated and sold there. That was one of the action items that have been created and completed at this time. Moving along to the federal regulations on single-use plastics. So a couple years ago, this was pretty big in the press. So on December 17th, 2022, so very recently, the regulations actually registered by the federal government on reducing single-use plastics. When this came into effect, there are several dates along the timeline. One is 1 year after it was enacted, so on December 17th, 2023. Prohibitions on sale of straws will come into force, so that's later this year. On the same date, on December 17th of this year, there will be prohibitions on the manufacture and import of all of the 6 single-use plastics. So at this point, that's checkout bags, plastic cutlery, food service ware, ring carriers, stir sticks, and straws. And then the last item here on the timeline is prohibitions on the sale of all other single-use plastics come into force. A note more recently on April 18th, so right now, the federal government released a regulatory framework paper on public comment, which is called the Recycled Content and Labeling Rules for Plastics. So the comments are due by May 18th. Staff will be generating comments on that. So if you remember, I also spoke about green procurement as one of our action items previously in our slides. This hopefully will guide what those are. Basically, when we're coming up with our green procurement rules, we didn't want to have rules that differed significantly from the federal regulations. So we will be commenting on this and using this when it does become regulation to guide what the city of Hamilton will be doing. That is the last slide for item 8.5, so I will stop sharing to take questions.
All right, is there any discussion on this item? Kevin, go ahead.
Okay, through the chair, the first question is single-use plastics, so medical equipment. There's a lot of single-use plastics, and we saw that increase during COVID because there's more needles. And how's that being addressed?
Pardon me?
How are we going to address that?
So us as a city, so again, the ban that I was speaking about was a federal government ban, right? So what they defined, they had a criteria for defining how they were going to ban certain items. So the 6 items that actually came up, they had to be problematic in the environment, and they found a significant amount in the environment. Those were 2 of the main factors, which led them to banning them. I would say that medical equipment didn't meet the criteria, and so it didn't meet the banning at that point in time. It doesn't mean it won't be banned in the future. For the city of Hamilton, we haven't looked at, as a city, how we would be banning single-use plastic items such as medical equipment. I would say that it's one area that the federal government has also looked at is trying to stay away from a little bit. For example, straws that I mentioned that would be banned, they wouldn't be banned in places like long-term care facilities because they're needed in those cases, right? So certain people aren't able to drink or eat without the use of straws. So I would say at this point, it hasn't been looked at or thought of.
All right, next up we have Councillor Wilson, go ahead.
Thank you. And through the chair, just a little bit of clarity on that last slide there where we talk about in 2019, council directed a feasibility report on a zero plastic waste plan. And then in 2021, single-use plastics started being identified as the federal area of focus. Just a question of scope there. What would it be possible to be sent the report back that happened from the 2019 motion on feasibility? I get a sense from that, just the bullet point on the slide, that direction was broader. Obviously, the federal regulations are enabling, and so we can move faster maybe on single-use plastics. Just wondering about the plastics that are not single-use and what came maybe about from that past feasibility study with respect to those.
So through the chair, yes, we were asked to look at what you mentioned was a zero plastic waste plan. However, staff, when reviewing that, it wasn't deemed feasible for us to create a completely zero plastic waste environment from the jurisdiction of what the municipality can do in relation to what the province and the federal governments can do. So obviously, if we have zero plastic waste is something that is much larger than what the city of Hamilton and what staff can actually enact for regulations and these types of things. So the feasibility of that it's just not practical. What we can do is have a plan or a strategy to deal with the products that are in place and are in the market and we do have to deal with, and that's what we did with that strategy. So hopefully that answers your question on the feasibility.
It definitely answers the question, and I think the single-use plastics is now just a really great example of when those higher levels of government do create those regulations, we can move forward. So maybe as we do the solid waste management master plan, can come back to that question a little bit, but just, yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councillor Wilson. Next up, we have Councillor Taddison. Go ahead, please.
Just wanted to ask the group there, is there any data in terms of like Hamilton, Ontario, or Canada as to, what's the tonnage per annum? How much single-use plastic currently goes to landfill?
Through the chair, the federal government definitely included in some of their discussion papers estimates as to what they think that is. Off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you, unfortunately, but it was a high amount. But if you want, I can certainly provide that information to the members of this committee, a link to that paper and that data.
Yeah, that would be great. Thanks. I just, in terms of, are we making a dent in it? Like, we have to kind of know where we are right now. So I was just curious to that. And I would take that offline with you as well. I'd like some further discussions about single-use plastic. So thank you very much.
All right. And sorry, through the chair, just to add to that, if you did want to look at it from a City of Hamilton perspective, we could look at our waste composition studies or waste audits that I spoke about previously, both multi-residential and also single-family curbside, to identify what at the curb we're actually generating and what our residents are generating. And we could extrapolate that to what we would think would be an estimate for the municipality on an annual basis.
I think that's what I'm looking for. So again, I don't want to give you any extra work today, but we'll talk about that later. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Councillor Tattison. Kevin, second time speaker, please. Go ahead.
Yeah, through the chair. Actually, I agree with the councillor. Through our curbside audits, if we could get some data, it would be great, because that would give us an idea. Okay.
Very good. Okay, so only comment I would make is I hope somebody out there invents a alternative to the plastic straw that isn't paper, because they are horrendous. So could I please get a mover and seconder to receive the staff presentation 8.5, please?
I'll move it.
Moved by Kevin, seconded by Councillor Tattison. All in favor? Show of hands. Any opposed? That carries. All right, moving on to item 10, discussion items. Are none? Or, sorry, 11.1, terms of reference. May I please have a mover and seconder to put the item on the floor? Moved by Councillor Tattison, seconded by Councillor Alex Wilson. Are there any questions or discussions from the committee respecting the terms of reference? None? All right, all in favor, show of hands. Any opposed? That carries. Notices of motion. Are there any notices of motion from the members? None? All right. General information and other business. Are there any items of general information or other business? Seeing none? All right. I can't, this is unfortunate, I can't do the adjournment. So may I please have a mover and seconder to adjourn? Oh, I can second it. All right. Councillor, that's okay. I'll give someone else the honor today. Councillor Tattison, moved by Councillor Tattison, seconded by Councillor Alex Wilson. All in favor, show of hands. Any opposed? All right. That's everything. Thank you, everybody, for the Waste Management Subcommittee meeting.